Okay, hey, what's up guys? Welcome to week 7 on the Underwater Realm video blog. Had a great week this week with everybody working on their different departments, but this week's video blog is going to be focusing in more detail on the lighting techniques that Eve's been developing. We've had a lot of feedback from people wondering what the hell we meant when we said that the technique was fundamentally flawed, because they're quite right, the test did look great, but there is a fundamental problem with it, which we're going to go into in a little bit more detail now. The technique that we developed was based on bouncing a hard light source up at a reflective medium and then agitating that reflective medium to create light patterns on the floor of the set. Fine, no problems there. And contrary to a lot of the comments that we've been receiving, the problem wasn't with the light source, the problem wasn't with the way the reflective medium were being used. You could actually see a significant difference between the different types of lights, whether we were using Fresnel lights, PAR lights or spotlights. You could also see a huge difference in the patterning when we created high amplitude waves with low frequency or high frequency waves with low amplitude. All those things were having a really dramatic effect, and we could control very finely the pattern that we were creating. But that is not the problem. No amount of research and development along that idea is going to help, because there is a fundamental problem with the technique, and that is as follows. The effect that we're trying to recreate is the effect of the sun passing through the surface of the water and then hitting the seabed. Now, the crucial thing there is that the light rays are not moving, or not moving to any great degree when that happens. The sun is shooting through the air, hitting the surface of the water. The pattern is being created by the turbulent surface of the water. It's not being created by the water 50 meters down, or even 10 meters down. It's happening in the first meter of the water as literally the surface is being agitated up and down. And what's happening there is the surface is actually cutting and bending the light rays and letting some areas through, focusing some other areas, and that's creating a dark and light pattern on the seabed. What we were doing is we were bouncing a light and then moving where that light was falling. So if you were to imagine that the room we were doing our rehearsal in was foggy or hazy, and you could actually see those light rays, you'd see our light rays sweeping backwards and forwards across the set. Now, when it actually falls on the floor of the set, the effect might be very similar, but fundamentally it's very, very different. And that becomes a problem, because obviously when you're underwater, those light rays are very, very obvious. They show up, the twinkling God rays, some people call them, that are falling straight down onto the set is a really important effect of being underwater. But also the particular nature of the sea is such that there's so many small particles in the water. As you look at things further away, they become cloudy and foggy. And we needed to recreate that on set by using haze and using fog. And the byproduct of that is that you'd also see these light rays. And so there would be a really obvious problem when you get onto set and you fire everything up and you have a huge sheet of material moving, and you've got our actor moving around, and then you've got these light rays sweeping backwards and forwards across the set. It would be a dead giveaway that what we were doing was not real. The important lesson to learn here is, of course, that we've discovered that there is a fatal problem with this solution over 6 months before we start principal photography. And at this stage, early in research and development, it's very easy to go, okay, well, that idea didn't work. What else can we do? If we'd been a month before principal and somebody had gone, I think there might be a problem with the lighting solution, that's a really big problem to try and change, because by that point you've rehearsed and you've invested in certain techniques. So it's the whole point of research and development, and we're now moving ahead with a new technique which Eve has come up with, suggested by some of the folks over at Exeter University, which is to use an old theatre effect, which is to actually use a sheet of heavily distorted glass in front of your light and to rotate a huge disc in front of the face of the light with random shapes cut in it. In fact, we've got one here that I can show you. Eve, would you pass the kit over here? We've tested this with a very small light, and it creates quite an interesting effect. And crucially, what it's doing is not reflecting or bouncing the light, it's actually cutting the light, so the light rays will remain straight. But if we take a look here, we can show you exactly the sort of thing we mean. Cheers, babe. Okay. So you've got a huge drum disc like this, and just here is a sheet of very high profile glass which has got lots of intricate shapes and things cut out of it. Would you plug that in actually? Yeah. Just here. There's a thing back here. So we've got a sheet of glass here which has got varying depth. It's got lots of patterns, almost like you'd get in a bathroom window. The light shines through this disc. Now this disc, when we plug it in, this is going to rotate, and there we go. So we've got a disc here rotating, and that disc has completely random shapes cut in it. And so the light sits here, goes through this cookie cutter, and will then pass through this sheet of light. Motor just here, and obviously the whole unit rotates inside this circle. And that creates a wonderful effect. Hopefully we've got some footage. If not, we can intercut some footage of exactly the effect it creates. So our plan is to create something just like this, but on a much bigger scale. So we'll be creating something the size of a, 2-3 meters across to cover a light head the size of a dustbin. And that, hopefully, if we can find the right glass and we can find the right pattern, we'll create something that's much more appropriate, and we'll actually cut the light rather than trying to refract it around. Cheers, babe. So that's what we're moving ahead with lighting, and that's what we're moving ahead with lighting. And next week we're going to be talking in a little bit more detail about the techniques that we've been weighing up between motion capture versus hand animation.